fabulous and wonderful, fantastic human beings. It is 1 o'clock. We got a small crowd, but that does not mean we're not going to have a good time here, right? Woo! Right. You can tell that I do a lot of kids' story times because we're projecting. We might start doing Pete the Cat later on if we need to, if it gets dead. So it's going to be a good time, all right? My name is Judy Prince-Neeb. I am a youth services librarian with the Torrance Public Library, and I am excited that you all are here. We're here to entertain you, and we're going to have a really good discussion today, all right? So today's panel is Finding Family. Today we will explore what happens when the ties that bind families together begin to fray, tangle, or constrict. We will be discussing how using art to explore how families, both fictional and real, are shaped by fame, fears, food, and sometimes phantasms. Now, before we, oh no, I like that. I always like doing the quiet pauses. It's always more impactful. Before we dive into these topics, and I'm pretty sure tons of more other things, some quick housekeeping rules. Just make sure your phones are on silent. If you have to leave the panel, no worries, we understand, bathrooms, and, totally fine. We will have a chance for opportunity for audience questions later. And except for Tim, you've got a panel like at 2:30, right? Or
I don't think so.
Because I think.
Oh yeah, I do have a thing. I can't sign with you guys. Yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect. So I was going to say the author signing for this panel is going to be under the sails. Can you guys repeat AA04? Fantastic. That is where it's going to be happening at 2:30. Books will be available for purchase thanks to the Mysterious Galaxy Bookstore. If you've not been to Mysterious Galaxy, San Diego, absolutely fantastic. I used to run the romance book club, and it was great. So with that, let us meet our fantastic panelists. Immediately to my left is Adam Nimoy. Adam practiced entertainment law for 7 years before becoming a television director. He has directed over 45 hours of network television, as well as For the Love of Spock, a documentary film about his father's most famous alter ego. Okay. Calm.
Awesome.
What are we doing? Adam is the author, there we go, of My Incredible, Wonderful, Miserable Life and the Most Human, Reconciling with My Father, Leonard Nimoy, which was published on June 4th by the Chicago Review Press.
Woo!
Yes, thank you. All right, next we have the fabulous Gibbs sisters. There is Shawneé. Raise your hand. Yeah, so we know which one. Yeah, Shawneé. And then we have Shawnelle. Yes. And they are the authors of the HarperCollins YA graphic novel Ghost Roast. Beginning their careers as independent comic creators, the award-winning writing team has written for DreamWorks Animation, Cartoon Network, and Marvel Comics' Women of Marvel anthology. Originally from Oakland, California, the pair... Woo! I love it. The pair currently live, work, and play in Los Angeles, which is okay.
Yeah. As long as they come back to visit.
Oh,
Yeah. I'm from the Northwest, so I'm like, let's go. Yeah. All right. Eddie An is an environmental justice attorney and the executive director of Brightline Defense, a San Francisco-based environmental justice nonprofit. He is also the debut author of Advocates, a graphic memoir published by 10 Speed Graphic.
Woo!
Yeah. And San Diego Comic-Con special guest Thien Pham is a graphic novelist, comic artist, and educator based in Oakland, California. He is the author and illustrator of the graphic novel Sumu and Eisner nominee. Oh, wait a minute. I can't say nominee anymore. Eisner winning.
We don't have to talk about it.
In the middle of an introduction. How great is that?
I'm very shy.
Yeah.
But here's the award.
Yeah. Just going to carry it around. Yeah. Of Eisner award-winning Family Style, and has done the art for the middle grade graphic novel Level Up, written by Jean Lewin Hain. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for being here. So with that in mind, let's get to our pressing questions. And we're going to start with Adam, and we're going to work our way around. And I do like to mix it up a little bit, so it's not
Mix
we're just
that.
going to be like that. So we will go in the middle on occasion. All right. So starting with Adam. I know, no pressure. How do you first approach any writing or illustration project? When do you realize that it's time to tell this particular story?
Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me? Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. I first want to say that I accept the nomination for the Green Party for President of the United States. Thank you so much for coming. It's an honor to be here. Judy, thank you for having me, and the staff of Comic-Con. I am not a graphic novelist. I'm in the company of some amazing graphic novelists. I had the chance to review all of their work before I came here and was very intimidated. I can't do what they did, and I feel very privileged to be in their company. I wrote a memoir about my relationship with my father, and I had touched on some of these issues with my dad in my first memoir, which has now been reverted back to me. So if you buy it, I can finally get a royalty out of it.
Oh, yeah.
It just reverted back from Simon & Schuster. It did not sell very well, which is fine. My incredibly wonderful, miserable life. I touched on some of the issues I had with my dad and the timeliness of the, I was writing more, this particular memoir, I was writing more about my recovery and my relationship with my kids and, and family relationships and raising my kids still, in a kind of recovery mode as a single dad. But I kept coming back to this relationship with my dad. I mean, I felt like I had done it. I wrote about it. I did an article for the Boston Globe. It was enough, and I should just leave it alone, except that when I was writing this next piece of work, which I was determined to be as a memoir, being in recovery for 20 years now, somehow by some weird miracle. Thank you. I kept coming back to my dad. I just couldn't resist it. And then the thing that made it really timely for me was I still go to meetings. I go to Al-Anon meetings, which is for family members who have an alcoholic or addict in the family. And I go to AA meetings for myself. I'm called a double winner. I go to both 12-step recovery programs. And when I would share about my relationship with my dad and the success of our relationship due solely to 12-step recovery, it resonated with people, and they kept coming up to me after meetings when I would share about, anonymously, they didn't know I was related to Leonard Nimoy, they didn't need to know, but people were really, it was resonating with them more and more to the point where they would say, I'm going to call my dad tonight, I'm going to call my estranged mother or sibling. And it just felt like I really had more to do, a deeper dive about what happened with my dad, because my first memoir really ended in '08 just as we were reconciling. And then for the last 7 years of his life, I was very close to him. So it just felt like this was the time to kind of deeper dive into that project.
Thank you.
Well, when you're working with two people or more, I feel like there's a delicate sort of dance that we do in terms of like how ideas come and when we decide to hop on them. And we both have very winding career paths of how we got here today. You mentioned animation, but we were, in production, television production, and lots of other things, teaching and such. But Shawneé actually came up with the idea for Ghost Rose.
Yeah, so the idea had, and when I thought about it, as you were speaking, Adam, the idea had been brewing even before I pitched the idea to Shawneé. So we took our mom on a trip to New Orleans, like years back, and we were, there's a place in New Orleans called Congo Square, and New Orleans has a history, dating back to, the slavery days, but there was a park where on Sundays, I think they let enslaved people come and dance, and just kind of get away, have a break on Sunday. And my sister and my mom, it was her birthday weekend, we were just dancing out there and just in honoring, the ancestors and the people, who were enslaved. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I wonder if I don't know for sure, but I wonder if we have some connection, to New Orleans. I just feel connected to this place. Anyway, fast forward, Shawnelle said we worked in production. I had some experience working on a paranormal show, one of the big paranormal shows. It was one of my early jobs in TV where I'm like watching all this paranormal footage, guys going in, and we were just watching all the raw footage, all the interviews and stuff. And I just got immersed, and we already grew up loving ghost stories with our family, but I just felt like there's a story here. And so I pitched Shawnelle an idea. I just thought maybe we can tell a story about, I don't know what it is yet, but in the paranormal world, and maybe about a father and a daughter. And that was the catalyst. And
it took years, yeah. Like we would go back and forth, and sometimes it's like we pitch each other. You know how people go and pitch their ideas to publishers or other entities, but we're pitching back and forth. And in the beginning, I was like, I don't know. So it's like we have to convince each other, and and we just continue to work on it together.
So I won her over.
Thank goodness. Yeah, because it's been incredible to work together. And we didn't draw this book, so Emily Cannon is our wonderful illustrator, who we met in Los Angeles, who just took everything from our brain and made it, manifest. So it's great.
And the colors are by Ashwarya Tandon, yeah. And we're just happy to talk about it.
That sounds great.
So for folks who might not be aware of my own background, I used to keep my nonprofit career very separate from my art to begin with. So I came out of zine culture, which was essentially like, hand-stapled booklets, trying to make sure that it's, palatable enough to groups of people coming in through a zine festival. I don't know if you've ever been to San Francisco Zine Fest.
I mean, I've been ape at Zine Festival since 2002. Yes. So that's our world. Yeah.
It's a whole kind of very do-it-yourself aesthetic to begin with, and I used to create fiction stories. So I did that for goodness, probably 7-8 years before starting to do autobiographical comics, and I started publishing them in February 2020. Right before the pandemic hit, and I wasn't expecting the reaction that it was supposed. That I was just like, these are for me very personal stories about how I even connected to nonprofit work to begin with, and part of it was ultimately having a visual pamphlet or some kind of small book I could give to my parents ultimately, because the central conflict in the book that I wrote is essentially my parents not really caring for my nonprofit work. It wasn't what they thought I should be doing with my life, and I think nowadays
non-profit to Asians is not a good term, you guys. Asian parents do not like that.
Yeah, generally, it was a very painful experience to try to get them to understand that worldview and that lifestyle that I had chosen. But yeah, now that it's out, it's been a journey.
I think I have some of your old zines. Yeah, because I go to Zine Fest and pick stuff up.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm also lucky to be. I'm participating in an art show with Eddie, coming up in at USF
Yes.
in San Francisco, and I was able to take a peek at some of your originals, done in a sketchbook, by hand. With pen and do you do markers or
markers.
And I was like, I haven't used pen and paper in so long that I was like, what? People still do this? How do they undo? How do you double tap the paper? I don't get it. I have been trying to tell my story for a long time, and in some ways I have been telling my story for my whole life. I don't know if you guys remember this, but in grade school you come to a class, and the first assignment in an English class would be write about yourself, like an interesting story for yourself. So the crutch I always had was, hey, I'm going to write the story about how my family came to America, right? And at that time, I didn't really know the story. It was just like stories I've heard from hearsay, and I would tell the story. And I was telling this story in 2006 or 2005 to my friend Jean Yang, who basically was like, dude, you gotta do this story, man. It's the only thing interesting about you. And I spent like maybe a day trying to explain to him all the other interesting things about me. But I was like, yeah, you're right. This is the only thing interesting about me. So this might be my only graphic novel, you guys. But I couldn't do it. I have, like, if we go to this art show, I have sketches and actual small comics dating back to 2006 of me trying to work out the story, and I just could not tell the story. And in between this time, there was been also a couple other Vietnamese diaspora stories. I'm going to shout out Vid America, which is by GB Tran, just amazing. And The Best We Could Do. If you guys haven't seen The Best We Could Do, it's one of the best graphic novels of all times, but also about the Vietnamese diaspora. And I was like, they got it. Like, I guess I don't, what I've come to realize,
What held you back?
That and I just couldn't figure out the story, And then it wasn't until the pandemic. I know that pandemic is terrible. I'm sorry, but for me, it was amazing. It was such a growth experience because I got a chance to hang out with my parents. So because I was, I came home and made sure they're okay every week, and after about 5 weeks of seeing them, I was like, I don't have anything else to say to these people. So I asked my mom. I finally did. I said, Mom, tell me the story of when we came to America. And my parents are immigrant Asian parents, and one of the things about I think about immigrant Asian parents is they hold a lot of stuff back. They don't want to worry you about their worries. They're like, go study. It's always like, study, study, study. We'll take care of the rest. Never once talked about any of their traumas, any of their sadness, any of their difficulties. And so now I think my mom is, I'm old. I'm 48, and my mom is older too. So I think she finally figured, okay, I'll tell this kid my story, or this 48-year-old son my story. And when she was telling me, I remember just sitting there, just going, okay. And then she told me the story, and I just did not expect the feeling that I was getting. Like, I was so moved. Like, I was like, what? And by the end of the time she was telling me, it was only like a half an hour, but I was like sobbing. I was like, I can't, and because I took my parents for granted. Like, we all have taken our families for granted. Like, my mom would call me and be like, ugh, and it's like, they came here from another country. They uprooted themselves so that me and my brother can have a better life. And as they're telling me this, I was like, I was just so moved that I came home and I was like, this is it. I have to tell this story. But even then, I couldn't tell it because I didn't have my own voice, I didn't really know how to tell it. I didn't know how to make it different than all the other stories like this. Until my mom asked me one day, she said, hey, what do you remember about coming to America? And so I started telling her, and I said, hey, yeah, I remember that time you gave me that rice ball when we were on the boat. And it's like, oh, yeah, I remember when we had that steak. And I realized that, like, all my memories were based on food. So it was all based on the meals I've had and then everything around it. So that was like, that's my voice. So my memoir is all told through memories of food. And then, so that's when I knew, like, I had to do it. And I don't know about you all, but when I have decided that I needed to tell this story, it, like, came out of me. Like I was bleeding, like it wasn't something that I even had any trouble thinking about. It was like I just could not even stop. Like I was just like, whereas before I was just like, and I don't get moments like that very often. And like I felt like I had to seize it right there, like I had to grab it right there, or else it might never come back. So.
Then I'm gonna start with Shawnelle, and we're going to go this way, and then we're going to end at Adam. Okay, so we're going to mix it up a little bit. And then what we're going to do is, how do you balance the truth you want your readers to receive with the perception or perspective of others?
Wow. Yes.
No pressure.
Yes, and so I just give, and I feel like it's almost like a channeling that happens for me when we're writing characters and their dialogue and their words in particular. I mean, it's like once you get into a state where where everybody is, I don't know, it might sound weird, I don't know, but it feels like channeling to me. Like they're just speaking through, and I'm just kind of like typing. Oh, that's Oliver. Oh, of course Doug would say this, or you know what I mean? Like, they just come out. They just come. So. That's all that I do. It's almost like transcribing a little bit. I mean, and then, and that's how the story comes through. Now, what people receive, or how they receive it, or I just have to kind of like remove myself from it. Now, Shawneé is somebody who will go up and read all of the good reads.
Oh
Like, she'll
man,
just read like all of the Amazon.
I
She'll
will
just, like,
never
read,
look at
like,
that.
it and everything, and I'm like, listen, maybe every 3 months. I don't know. I could peek in there, but like I can't do it. Like, and so yeah.
Stay away, you guys.
You are
So
brave.
She's so brave.
It's like a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm just like, what are they saying? Don't tell me. What are they saying? Don't tell me what they're saying. What are they saying? But so that's the way that I do it, because I don't want to be, and the way that people receive the material is up to interpretation, like even in terms of like or what they get out of it. Like Chelsea has complex relationships with her friends.
That's our main character.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, see, that's how. And so to see people say this is very true to life, or people saying, oh, this is something different, or just certain scenes, or I just I just leave it out there, and then so it's really cool when you hear people say the family story is resonating with them, or like Chelsea really resonates as something really not only relatable, but it feels like a today's voice, you know what I mean? So all of that stuff really feels good. And then all the bad stuff, I'm just like, well, that's your opinion. But we have to filter, for ourselves, to, because we're giving even little pieces of ourselves into these stories, or a lot of pieces of ourselves when we, we're telling autobiographical stories. And, it could be painful. It could be, for writers and people who are giving of themselves. So we have to also protect ourselves in sharing of the work, while just wanting the audience to get whatever they get from it, connect or not. I think it's a beautiful exchange.
Yeah, and I think with our story, this is it's a YA graphic novel. It's set in New Orleans, and it's paranormal. It's about a 15-year-old girl who has to go work with her dad's paranormal removal service after she gets into some trouble. And we wanted to explore the complex, nature of New Orleans, which is a beautiful city, so beautiful. It's like no other. It's one of our favorite towns in the country, but it's got the Spanish and French influences. It's like no other town in the world, but it's got the troubled, history of slavery. And we were like, how do we do this? How do we make it fun? You know what I mean? How do we make it enjoyable? How do we make it so that when young people of all colors and kids of color and anybody experiences this, they can understand the trauma, the heavier stuff, and then have a good time. And even though I'm sort of, I don't know what it is. I like peeling a scab off of a skin to look at the reviews. I'm more delighted, because then you see that people get what you were going for, and especially with African American families and histories like your family. The trauma of what has happened over the years, the histories we've lost. A woman who came to one of our talks was talking about how she back in the day, and she was older than us, maybe 20 years older. She wanted to ask her grandmother and older great grandparents who were like closer to people who had been enslaved. They just shut down. We don't talk about it. We don't want to talk about it. And it's like it's now our jobs to uncover it and discover it in a new way, empower ourselves, like take back the history, look at it, say, reclaim, say, okay, this is terrible for all of us too, everybody. And then like, how do we take this and then move forward in a better way for a better culture and society? So I feel good. I'm so happy that the book exists, and it, even if it like grabs a little bit of that, which I think it does. A lot of people say, I don't know how y'all took history, like this kind of history, and made it fun and enjoyable. So I'm pleasantly surprised, even though you never know what people are going to get out of it. But I feel good that we kind of did our job.
That feels like when you make a piece of art like yours and it just exists in the world to do good. and it's just all around all the time to do good is just like, that's a great experience. Like, it's a great feeling, you know.
That moment of connection.
Yeah.
For myself, family perceptions with my graphic memoir were really hard to balance. It's a large part of the book that I wrote was essentially my mother grappling with her relationship with her father, my grandfather, and essentially the trauma of the Korean War, their own aspirations for mobility in the U.S. So a lot of what they did to begin with was impose their views on what, American success was on myself and how I should go get the law degree, go make a ton of money off of it, acquire property, and then buy them a Mercedes-Benz. And the point of it was, of course, not the Mercedes-Benz unto itself. It's more the gesture that represented. I was really worried when I, had these comics coming up on Instagram. My mother actually has an Instagram account, so she's been reading the comics as they've been coming up. But also, by the way, she reads the comment section very kind of rigorously, just to even see like why is J Bennett 049 saying like they don't like this component of the comic. So she treats it like a pronouncement from the New York Times. But at the same time, like I did think it was important for her not to see the entirety of the book and not to be editing it, in real time. And so part of me was really nervous when the book came out. I wasn't sure how she was going to react to it. But the good news is she's read it 3 times already.
Oh, I'm so proud, probably.
She did really enjoy it, and she cried on each reading. She thought it was it was a very assertive take on their relationship. It's ultimately, and I emphasized to her, it's my perspective on family, and that's what I really appreciate about your book, Adam, too, is that ultimately you own the perspective in which you tell the story, and then hopefully other people around you, especially family members, will understand that.
I like Eddie. I had the good fortune to put my comic on Instagram. I think this is I'm not an Instagram comic book person, but because of the pandemic, I was like, I really want people just to read it. And honestly, I did not intend this to be a book, or I didn't start intending it to be a book. I intended it to be an Instagram comic, and my goal was that I would post a page a day. That's how crazy I was working because of this story. I posted a page a day, 6 panels a day, every day. I started at 7 in the morning. I finished at 7 at night. And unlike Adam and Eddie and Shawneé, I am not a writer. I'm not very good as a writer. I don't know how to write. I don't have a very good grasp of the English language. So my art is always through comics. So I don't have a script. I don't have thumbnails. I just do a page, and then I let that page inform the next page, and I just go on and on until I finish, really. And partly, and if you read my comics, it's very sparse. There's not very much text, and that's not because of anything other than that. Like, I'm not a good writer. So one of the cool things about Instagram, when I was putting on Instagram, and I'm sure you felt this too, is that like every page, I would get instant reaction. So it wasn't like I finished the book and then gave it to my editor and then waited for comments or whatever. I was like, every day I'm like, oh, okay, so that didn't work out, or like I should do that differently. Like, and it was never bad because it's Instagram and it's all my friends. So it was never like, you're the worst or anything like that. It would just be more like, oh, this one got more likes. So I feel like something like this resonates more. And so I was able to kind of fine tune it. And the other great thing about putting on Instagram is you're just like Eddie, my mom was reading it as well. And I get feedback from my mom every week. And I actually, if you guys get Family Style, there's a whole section in the back, and they are little comic strips about how my family reacted to all the strips. And they come from, like their reactions could be anything from, your typos is disgracing our families. Like my dad said that to me. He's like, you are a disgrace to our family. Fix those typos. And I said, Dad, when I get at that time I had already gotten a publishing deal. And I'm like, they'll fix it. He's like, no, fix it now. And then there's other reactions where and I asked my mom what she thinks of it. She's like, it's okay. But then I'd walk by, and I don't know if you ever felt this, but I would walk by and I would secretly hear her talk to her friend, and she's like, yeah, my son's a genius. It's amazing. But it's like, why don't you say that to me, Mom? Like, why are you telling other people, but instead never tell, it's like one of those things where they're just like, that person's great, but I would never tell that to their face. It's like, why? Why not tell me that to my face? Just, and it's just like, and the medium, and I'm a believer now in like Instagram and webcomics, because that instant reaction you get, not only is it gratifying, but it is also, it really helped me steer the story in that way, because I like knew what I wanted to say. But I, again, not having a writing background, I don't quite know sometimes if what I'm trying to say is coming through. And a lot of times Instagram will tell me that. They'll be like, okay, then I can adjust, So I actually changed a lot when the book came out because of the way that people reacted to it, yeah.
That's what I was going to ask, if you changed anything.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I changed a lot of things, and there's a whole new chapter. It's like, there's a lot of things that changed because of that.
Yeah, that's so funny that you say that you're not a writer, but the pacing, like in that first like you had me by the throat. I was like, I don't want to be crying. It's like right,
I always quote my friend Raina Tagelmeyer. She told me this one time, and I perked up. I was like, oh. And she still told me, and she's an amazing graphic novelist. I mean, you know Raina. She told me, she said, I'm not a good writer, and I'm an average. I'm an average writer, and I'm an average artist, but I'm an amazing graphic novelist. Because it's the graphic novel is its own language, and people always assume that, oh, you're good at art, you're good at writing, you're a good graphic novelist, but that's not quite true. That graphic noveling, telling a story through the graphic novel medium, is its own skill. Even if you're not drawing it, like when you're scripting it, it's a whole different thing than like scripting a movie or script anything, So, yeah. Adam?
Wow. Taking notes here from what these guys are saying. The issue I had when writing my memoir was that the perception of my father, who created the psychotic character. My father's very well known all over the world, and people have a certain perception of Leonard Nimoy. And my book is entitled The Most Human, and in which I humanize him and talk about some of the difficulties I had with my dad. As a young boy growing up, not being able to connect to him on any kind of visceral level. And then when I became a teenager and got into my addiction and my dad was deep in his alcoholism, it was just outright conflict with him. And I have to be very careful about talking about these issues and revealing these issues and how much I reveal, because of the fact that the guy is revered by millions of fans all over the world. And they don't want to hear, most people don't want to hear a mommy dearest, laundry list of grievances against my father. And my father wasn't around to read, the book, and give me some commentary. So I hired an editor, actually, out of New York, somebody who had been in the publishing industry and knew absolutely nothing about Star Trek. Perfect. She was perfect. and it was a woman, and I wanted a woman's sensibility, and she was perfect because of that. And she knew what we were up against, because we have to be very careful about revealing some of this other side to Leonard, and still be respectful of the fans. And we did it we did three things to try to soften the blow. Well, there were a number of other things. I mean, one of which was I was very circumspect about what I told in the memoir, and what she told me to leave on the editing room floor, and that I didn't need. That was number one. But we couch everything. There's a lot of conflict in there. I'm very honest about it. And not everything that happened with him, but certain episodes. Always, we're trying to find a balance, though, and so it's not perceived in a way that I'm just griping. And the way we did that was threefold. Number one, that my dad's parents were much like him, and much like Spock, they were not very emotive. He never knew what they were thinking. They never said they were very upset with him when he wanted to leave. They went through their own trauma. They were Ukrainian. They considered themselves Russian. But they left Ukraine because of these pogroms, because their family was being killed by these Russian Cossacks who come through this little village. And they ended up in an urban, from a small village in Ukraine in a heavily urbanized center called Boston. That's where my grandparents ended up. They were never very emotive with my dad. And when he said he wanted to become an actor, they were really angry with him and withheld, any support, any, financial support, certainly. So that was number one. That was his modeling, and that's why he had trouble, in part, we had trouble connecting when I was young. The second thing that I talk about with my dad is that my dad came to Los Angeles at age 18 after a 3-day train trip with almost nothing in his pocket and no connections whatsoever. He showed up in a wool suit, he said, in September. He was sweating. He was in Pasadena. And he just looked like he was from Transylvania. He says that in my documentary. He just looked, it was ridiculous. And he was so desperate to succeed, to support himself, and 6 years, 7 years later, he was supporting a family of 4, that was his complete mode, which was what he was doing in Boston. It was all about survival and hustling and selling newspapers and vacuum cleaners and folding chairs at the Boston Pops and working in a card shop. I mean, my dad was a hustler, and that was his focus. And when he got to L.A., it was magnified by the fact that he had this family to support, all the while pursuing this career in Hollywood, right? So he was desperate and focused on what he was doing, and family was not a priority for him, and that was okay. And finally, the other thing I talk about, I see your sign up there. To couch the blow is that I always say consistently throughout the book that I was always proud of my father, always. I mean, as a kid, I would be watching TV and he would show up in episodes, and it would just thrill me. And when he brought this Polaroid home in 1964, December 64, showing the first images of this weird spaceman from the planet Vulcan, I flipped out. I was 8 years old and old enough to know what I was looking at, and I flipped out. And I was always proud of what he had accomplished, and I say that throughout the book. I was just really, and that, I think those elements, I think, help people understand that I'm just trying to be honest about what happened with us. We had a transformative relationship. We were able to reconcile. It's a success story, but there's some things I think you should know about my relationship with Leonard Nimoy.
And I appreciate, because I did the audio version of your book, and the amount of honesty. There was a lot of similarities. I'm not the author at anything, and I'm just providing commentary because I felt the need to. But there was a lot of things that I felt similar to my own family situation with my own father and my own mother. Like, I'll talk to you about it later, but it actually helped me before going up to see my mom for my niece's graduation. I was like, oh, no, this is how I need to approach my mom in a different way. And it actually revolutionized my trip. It also gave me a little perspective of my sister. I'm like, oh, yeah, you're there. Okay, I'm over here. That's fine. So if you have not picked up any of these books, please do so. I'm going to be talking. Everyone, you all need to pick up any of these books. So that's my I just wanted to get that off my chest too. Okay, all right, there we go. I'm gonna go in a completely different way. I'm going to use a Kendrick Lamar line because 616 in LA for all those diss tracks is stuck in my head for like 2 months. And it's specifically this line that says, there's opportunity when living with loss. I discover myself when I fall short. And that whole track, it's just, as I was listening to that and when I got word that I was going to be on this panel, I'm like, that's this panel right here, that particular line. So with that in mind, I'd like for you guys to kind of talk about, I mean, you've touched upon it a little bit, but what did you discover about yourself in your writing for your various projects, and what would you like to use that going forward? So we're going to start with Shawneé, and then we're going to work our way, we're going to go this way, and then work our, Eddie, you'll be last, okay?
Starting with me?
Yeah.
Discovered about myself in writing Ghost Roast. I think I started to tap into my personal story a little bit more in Ghost Roast. Shawnelle and I have worked in independent comics for years. We write a lot of stuff for a lot of animated shows, and sometimes you're writing for other characters and in their voice. And with Chelsea, I dug into my own history. I tapped into middle school because she's in a school where she is, yeah, she's kind of a scholarship kid, and she's in a wealthy school, and she's feeling like an outsider. And this is actually up in Oakland. Oh. We went to one district school, and our mom was like, "Oh, I want to get you guys into a better school." And so she fought, and got us into this school called Claremont Middle School in Rockridge, and it was outside of our district, so we would bus in, and it was poor kids, and there were rich kids, and it was oh my God, where do I fit in here?
That Oakland school system is no joke. Yeah. That lottery to get into different schools is really no joke. It's a crazy lottery.
It is, yeah. So it was crazy to get in there and then like be in that space and feel those pressures that kids feel when you're filling out a place. And so definitely pulled from that and a lot of our own family stuff. But yeah, we wanted to tell a story that really resonated with teens, and a lot of people like pick up on it. They're like, I really feel it. I feel that there's a lot of truth and authenticity here. So, I think, digging into like personal things, traumas and stuff, and pouring that into the work on this book especially was great for me.
So Shawnelle.
Oh, I'm sorry. So
I know.
I know. Okay, so
I told you I like to mix it up on occasion.
yeah. So a lot of our genealogical research came into this, and I thought you were going to say that, but at the same time, when we were working on Ghost Rose, we were uncovering a lot about our family history, and this is a thing for a lot of African Americans, particularly with ties directly to the South, where a lot of our family is from. There's not a lot of records. There's not a lot of information. There's so much pain involved in the history that we just become detectives. You just have to become a detective. You have to be very intentional about, if you really want to know your family history. And Shawneé really is our, first of all, our research department, like the head of the research department.
Oh my God,
she did so much work, man.
And we poured that into the book so that
Yes.
Chelsea, our
does
main
it,
character,
yeah.
she like goes to library. She's digging through old like microfilm and microfiche. She's exhausted. It's like real old school.
Yeah,
But that
Shawneé
was, like,
would
part
be
of-
our librarian as
Yeah.
well, because she even has a background. But that sort of work, discovering that, like she discovered one of the bill of sales for one of our ancestors.
Our great grandfather.
Yeah.
He paid for his own. I think it was $950. He ended up buying himself out of slavery.
Mm-hmm. She found a connection to a political figure, all this stuff, and then even got us back to Africa.
Whoa.
I mean, like literally, like we have a Nigerian, West Africa. Like we have reconciled, and like we're going to Abuja at some point. So like she's done all this work, and then that also, we were able to put that into the book. But just like that sort of hair, even one of our ancestors in New Orleans, a neighborhood called Algiers. So randomly, we were just going to New Orleans just to do some more research on the ground. We love to take visual references for Emily. Like Emily here, like she just be like soaking them up, and she's so incredible as an artist. But we got to do all that work, but randomly, we just stayed at an Airbnb. I was like, oh, this sounds cute, Algiers. Just like a little neighborhood, and oh, this sounds cute. It's like a little island or something. Let's go there.
Right adjacent to New Orleans.
Yeah, right, yeah. And so we stayed there and found out one of our ancestors lived like right on that block. Like, yeah, and that was like while we were staying there, we, even in all this research, we were meeting some of our relatives and stuff, all that kind of stuff. So it's just like, so many like little woo-woo things that happen with this book. If anybody wants to know later, I will tell you one in particular detail, but just like all that sort of stuff is in the, in our jambalaya. That's like a food reference that we used to grow up eating, and that made it into the book. It's all these wonderful things, and so when people appreciate those details, it makes you really happy, But yeah.
I love that the mom was an archivist. It's like, research. This is a good time to remind you to support your public library. Okay, yeah. Adam.
Judy, I'm going to can I ask you to repeat the question?
Yes, no, that's totally fine. What did you discover about yourself, and what would you like to use with that discovery going forward in any future projects?
Oh, okay, yeah. All right, well, there's a couple things. Number one, it was what Tim was saying a lot about the fact that, when you're hot,
More than hot?
When you're hot on it, you got to do it. And this is the thing. I mean, I'm not a young man, and I'm not just starting off with a writing career. I've done a lot of different things, but this was a story that needed to be told and gotten out there. And it's something, and it's really inspired me to continue on and try to get this stuff out there. I mean, this is the point when you're hot and you're on it, and you're feeling the passion is the best time to really try to put it out in the world. I mean, for so many years, I've grappled with the fact of my stuff's not that good. No one bought my first book. What's the point? My dad would say, the point is just to be in process. Mm-hmm. My dad was an artist in process. He didn't try to create a pop culture icon. He just tried to imbue the character with some sensitivity and some personal connection to his own story, which Spock is. And that is very inspirational to me. I was reading a lot. I'm a big Beatles fan, and there's one story about a song that's on the Sgt. Pepper's album, and Paul wrote it, and he was ready to go, and George Martin was not available. It's a Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock, and Paul bypassed George Martin and found another producer because there's an orchestral piece. There's a quartet on this song, and they cut the song while George was off producing another artist. And when George found out about it, he was freaking livid with Paul that he did that, because that was his thing. He's classically trained. But the point was, and we see this over and over again with the Fab Four, is that Paul had it, he knew it, he wanted to get it done, and he got it out there, and it's published. I mean, these true artists know that you just have to deliver the goods and not worry about the perfection of it. This happens over and over again. When you see the pressure they were under, Rubber Soul, which is an amazing album, they wrote, they recorded, they mixed it, and it was out in about 6 weeks. It's insane. So, and that's what I'm learning about myself going forward as an artist, is just stay in process, try to get the work out there, don't put the stuff off, don't meander around. It may not be perfect, but it's worth it just to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna let Eddie. I've been talking about this book for a year now, and Eddie's book is coming out, and I just want to make sure that you have the time to talk about this, Eddie. So I'm going to defer to you right now.
I'm going to actually promo Thien's book. If you haven't read it yet, it's excellent. Yes.
Thank you.
And I do want to correct something you said. You are a very good writer. Unto itself, the sparseness in the writing accentuates the images too.
Thanks.
But I will say for myself, in thinking, one of the themes that has been really hard to talk about while I've been doing a book tour in the early months has been the. Yes. Yes, I will. Thank you for even pointing it out. One of the themes that has been harder to talk about the book while going on tour has been its overall theme, which is climate change. It's a very existential concept to deal with, and part of what I've been thinking through in the creation of art is, in many ways, I have nothing to lose now. Like, I feel like I'm achieving middle age, and then grappling with that, and like just being able to be comfortable about failing upward while creating art has been a lot of what I've been struggling with over I would say the last 15 years even of creating comics. So to be, published in this way has been a real joy, and I think at the end of the day, as Adam also mentioned, you just got to put yourself out there to a large degree and be okay with whatever Instagram commentary you'll get, or maybe the Goodreads reviews that you'll have to grapple with. Yeah, Goodreads is probably the hardest of them all, but yeah.
All right, so we're actually going to be gearing down to, we've got like maybe 2 minutes left, and I realize we've just had this great conversation. We didn't really leave any space for questions, so does anyone have a pressing question for our panelists? Go ahead. Yes, you know what? Let's go down. Not only speak the title, but where people can find you on social media so they can, get more information about your work.
My name is Thien Pham. My book is called Family Style. You can buy it here at the First Second booth at 2800. That's the booth number. My Instagram, my everything about me is THIENDOG at wherever. So like if you want to email me, it's THIEN Tindog at Gmail, or Tindog is my Instagram handle. Tindog is my my password into my bank account. So yeah, any of that stuff. So yes, it's everything. So anything you need to search for me, it's Tindog. Thank you.
Eddie on Advocate is the name of my book. It's being sold at the Penguin Random House booth, which is 1514 1515, I believe. And you can find me on Instagram, EHA Comics.
Okay, we're Shawneé and Shawnelle Gibbs. Our book is Ghost Roast. It's for sale, I think, at the Sales Pavilion with Mysterious Galaxy today.
Or anywhere books.
Yeah, or anywhere books are sold. And we're on Instagram, and you can find us at gibbssisters.com as well.
Adam Nimoy, the most human. Now available. You can find me at www.adamnimoy.com, and all my social media handles are there.
And I need you all to repeat after me. AA04.
AA04.
That's where the majority of our authors will be at 2:30 for a signing, book signing. Again, books provided by Mysterious Galaxy. Tin is off somewhere else. So, but you can find him. He's fantastic. All of these authors are fantastic. If you have not been aware of these books before, I'm not joking when I say you have to get them. They are fantastic. They're wonderful. Thank you all for being on this panel. Thank you for being here. I hope